California governor and potential 2028 presidential hopeful Gavin Newsom sat down with conservative commentator Ben Shapiro for Newsom's latest podcast episode.
Newsom launched his podcast in March 2025, and his first string of guests were all conservatives: Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, and Michael Savage. Now, in this episode, the two touched on many topics, but what seems to be the most viral was when the governor seemingly backtracked on a post from his press office about ICE agents. Take a look.
Your press office tweeted out that it was state-sponsored terrorism, which, I mean, Governor, I do have to ask you about that. Yeah. That sort of thing makes our politics worse.
Yeah.
I mean, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, our ICE officers obviously are not terrorists.
Yeah.
A tragic situation is not state-sponsored terrorism.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Newsom added that he disagrees with abolishing ICE. The two also discussed California's tax rate, and Shapiro brought up how many have left California. Newsom then hit back. Let's watch.
I'm not happy about anyone leaving the state, but population's grown 3 years in a row. The last time it declined, it went down with 11 other states, and we lost 151 people.
If you're talking not about immigration, if you're just talking about people who lived in California who are leaving, that number is high. And again, I'm not blaming that on you.
It could be the case in many, many states, as you know, across this country.
100%.
By the way, a lot of red states, which I'm surprised you guys don't talk more about. What about the last few years, all these red states losing folks? California hasn't been the last few years. These red states are Louisiana, Mississippi. Let's talk about those states. Let's talk about the murder rate. Adding to the top 10 murder rates in America are in red states. I think there's some real problems. The most regressive taxes in the country are in these red states. Who are you for?
Newsom also argued that 16 states tax their low-wage earners more than California taxes its high-wage earners. He said that 40% of Texas's middle class, for instance, pays more in taxes than Californians. Newsom and Shapiro also sparred over the gender ideology issue. Here's a clip that's been gaining traction.
The fundamental question that lies at the root of all of this is the question that you're not wanting to answer, which is whether boys can become girls.
Yeah, I think for the grace of God. Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the sympathy.
But there's so much hate and bigotry, so much condemnation, much judgment.
This is the part where I start to object.
Yeah.
Okay, the idea that
you may not be spewing it.
No.
Like some others. Trust me.
But
this is the business they're in.
There are lots of terrible people who say lots of terrible things. But
yes,
it is not an act of bigotry to say that a boy cannot become a girl, nor should my children be taught in K through 12 public schools that a boy can become a girl.
Yeah.
That is not an act of bigotry. That's an act of rationality and biological simplicity.
I respect your point of view. And,
but good people,
good people disagree on this.
That's such a cop-out. Come on.
First I want to say, and I'm going to get to that, but first I want to say that I think Gavin Newsom starting his podcast in the way that he did and continuing to bring on people that he knows are going to give him friction, I think that's a noble thing. It's a good thing. People should see the dialogue. I mean, he's one of the most adamant people that's against Trump on social media. Every day it's something. And so whether you like his antics or not, he's having the conversation in the same style that people would claim Charlie Kirk for doing with people that he knows are going to give him all the smoke. So I don't think that he should be looked at as like somebody who's not willing to have the conversation. I mean,
no, I totally agree.
Able to have the dialogue. To talk about the transgender thing, I think like something that he said during the podcast was never has so much attention been placed on so few people. And I think a lot of people understand now that 1% of the population ages 13 plus identify as transgender. And so to me, his answer, which you call a cop-out, I don't call it avoidance. I call it about respect. He's saying that he's allowing trans people to speak for themselves and through their lived experience. And I think that we have a lot of people that are not part of the community constantly trying to make rules and laws around the community. But often we're seeing trans people are completely left out of the convo. So it would be nice to see somebody of the community being propelled to have a dialogue. And we can see if somebody who's of sound mind and wants to have a dialogue about how best to look at this community. I mean, I'm not in it. And so I told you the people that I've met, and we've talked about this, is somebody at the hair salon who I spent hours with, because it's been about 3 hours at the hair salon, that told me that their kid transitioned and explained it to me as a mom. But their kid had just turned 21 and they allowed them to make the decision. So I'm of the mind work of live and let live. And it seems like that's what Governor Gavin Newsom is of as well.
I would like him for him to say that explicitly, though. I mean, saying like I respect your position, but reasonable people disagree. Like, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, right? Ben Shapiro is trying to bring up points about not just live and let live, but in public schools, children being exposed to an ideology that the vast majority of Americans disagree with. And it's something that has been advanced policy-wise and that he has signed into law repeatedly as governor. So I think he does have to stand on his own 2 feet on that issue.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about these really niche issues, like, are we going into K through 12 and teachers saying, hey, now here's a chapter about transgender? And if that's happening in the schools, have a dialogue about why that's happening. What are we doing? Is that happening in health education class? What age is that happening? And what's important in the curriculum? What makes sense for 1% of the population? Which is why I said we should be having a wider conversation with people in the community to figure out what's going on here. I think because we're still figuring that out, to start to make policies about the one bathroom or the one sports team that's affected and it's such a small population. I think that if Gavin Newsom really does have several laws on the books that have allowed what Ben Shapiro was discussing, that he should answer to that. But to have every single elected official need to find a solid answer on a topic that we're still trying to understand as a country, I think is exaggerated and unnecessarily exaggerated.
Well, I think it does matter, though, because after the last election, one of the common points of feedback for the Democratic Party was that they had gone too far left on these cultural issues. And so if he wants to be a contender for 2028, then I think he should have to provide his opinion on these issues that have been kind of hamstringing the party more broadly. But I wanted to get into this answer about abolishing ICE and the tweet that his team apparently sent out, because I found his response quite fascinating too, where he kind of passed the buck later on in his response to Ben Shapiro, saying that he thought referring to ICE as basically terrorists went too far, admitted that it was sent out by his staff. And so he just threw his staff under the bus, right? Like,
Yeah.
oh, it was my staffers who did that. I don't totally agree with that. It's like, okay, well, how much is your staff tweeting out that you don't agree with? And is this a valid reflection of your personal beliefs? Or are they kind of going rogue? And I would like to see that analyzed a bit more.
Well, I agree. I don't like when people blame their staff. I didn't like when President Trump put out the AI image of him in the Pope's outfit, and people were saying that was blasphemy. And he said, "Oh, that was the young people in my staff. I have nothing to do with it." I criticize him for that. I'll criticize Gavin Newsom. I think calling ICE agents terrorists is inflammatory language. I did an entire lens on how Tim Walz is asking to bring down the temperature, but also how he's criticized for being part of the temperature rising. Mm-hmm. And so part of being the adult in the room is like having oversight over your staff and just saying, and this goes to President Trump as well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to post like DHS videos that include Theo Von saying something that he doesn't want to be attached to, or use music to try to amplify a point that no one has to be attached to. We're not going to be children on social media. And we're not going to certainly allow people that are in our staff to tweet something that will sit in person in an interview and say that went too far. We're certainly not going to have that little bit of oversight. At the very least, we'll have somebody overseeing, like the director of social media, that understands exactly what Gavin Newsom would think. And if there's ever a question, they'll come to Newsom himself or his top report and ask that question. And so hopefully we can get to that point, which I've been asking for a long time, because social media, I mean, it's too effective to just be willy-nilly putting whatever out there. It really does. People take it as law when they see it.
All right, we have a lot more to talk about on Rising. Stay with us.